My name is Jamie and I want to talk about history and pop culture. Today we're going to talk about the anime TV series The Heroic Legend of Arslan and why people in history chose to serve kings. In this series of videos I'm going to be trying to show you how through TV series, anime, films and games you can learn easily about our own history. But instead of analysing a show or something to the core and picking it apart, I'm going to focus on one key thing that they do completely right. I mean, I could tell you what is wrong with this enormous sword, or what the hell this is, but I think you can understand that yourself, and I think that this isn't really something that has to be done. Today I'm going to tackle something that we as a modern, free-thinking and democratic people often don't really quite understand. Namely, why did people in history choose to serve kings? And to look at that, I want to show you an anime show that I think conveys it rather accurately. And this show is called The Heroic Legend of Arslan. This 2015 anime has been getting quite a lot of good reviews, with the only complaint being some lazy animation. It's also quite good at integrating some historical themes like kingship, religion, slavery and warfare, plus some extra pre-Muslim Iranian themes. But I think this show hasn't gotten quite the attention I think it deserves, so I thought I should start my channel on a video about this show. This show takes place in the fictional kingdom of Pars, based on historical Persia, in today's Iran, and its plot is based on the epic of Anime Arslan. In the royal capital of Ekbatana, modern-day Hamadan, rules the awe-inspiring warrior king Andragoras. His 14-year-old son, the crown prince Arslan, is his polar opposite, a kind and not at all warlike boy. When Arslan has to fight his maiden battle against the neighbouring Lusitanian kingdom alongside his father, the unthinkable happens as Andragoras' army is completely defeated and the Lusitanians take the capital. Arslan manages to flee with a Persian knight, Daryun, but now faces the task to retake his kingdom at the young age of 40. Start my analysation with a quote we hear quite early in the series. It is the king's first and foremost duty to protect his kingdom. That's what gives him power. It's like a bargain between him and his people. I think this is very true. We often hear the kings claim their right through religion, legend, or ancestry. But like the crown, the throne, and the scepter, they are more like symbols to a king. It's not what actually gives them power. What really gives them power are their people, the people around them, their followers. Kings are made and destroyed by their followers. This is something we see in the series. Every side, every king and prince has a group of loyal followers who do everything for him because they think it is either right or it is beneficial. We also see that it is vital for a king to win over support. In the early stages of the series, we see again and again how Arslan and his cause are saved by people who are better at fighting than him, who are more experienced than him, who are smarter than him, or have more knowledge about the world than him. But he is always mindful of it and knows and openly says that he's nothing without the people around him. And it is because he says it and admits it that they stay with him. This is one of the central jobs of a king, basically, to balance everyone out, to not to be the best at everything, but really to, yes, balance everyone out and lead towards their goal. This is really what ruling as a king in the Middle Ages is about balancing everything out, about finding a balance between kindness and brutality, about mindfulness and decisiveness, between commoners and nobles, between clergy and military, but without people who follow him and help him enforce this balance, he is powerless. The show illustrates further how a king can become a bad king and lose the faith of his followers. This doesn't necessarily mean that he's a brutal or oppressive king, but just incapable or not doing what the people who follow him expect him to do. In the show, the Lusitanian king loses the trust of his people because he falls in love with the enemy queen, a heathen, which he isn't supposed to do. On the other hand, King Andragovas claims his right to rule solely through military prowess. So once he loses a battle, his followers give him up because that was his only reason he was ruling. So he wasn't useful anymore. Against popular belief, this actually happened quite a lot in history, that people left their rulers who were incapable of ruling, who were bad rulers, who didn't do what they were supposed to do. So one historical example of this is King Stephen of England. Before Henry I died in 1135, he had named his daughter Matilda, wife of the Holy Roman Emperor, named as his heir. But because she was absent at the time of his death, her cousin, Stephen of Blois, took advantage of this situation and convinced most of the barons that he was the better suitor for the throne because he was male, and he bought the favour of the church and the city of London through rights and grants of freedoms. All was well until in 1136 a few barons in the southwest rebelled against him. This alone was no problem because he swiftly laid siege to their castle and they surrendered after 3 months. But instead of doing the expected and punishing them for treason against their king, by taking away lands or titles, or even maiming or killing them, he pardoned them, and the first thing they did was run off to Empress Matilda and support her. But also this did weaken his own position because lots of his followers weren't so sure about him anymore and thought about siding with Matilda. And when he finally arrested a bishop in 1139, this drove them to openly rebel against him, making it possible for Empress Matilda to land in England, and this started a long and drawn-out conflict of succession, which we call today the Anarchy. Examples like this show us how important it was to maintain a loyal follower base. Now, since we talked about bad kings, let's talk about good kings. For this, we only have to watch the main protagonist of the series, Crown Prince Arslan. He's basically the polar opposite of King Joffrey of Game of Thrones. Not only is he simply a decent human being, which Joffrey isn't, he is also everything you want in a medieval king. It's really what drove me to make this video because I think this is the best incarnation of a medieval king I've ever seen in popular media. So I broke the key features you would need as a king down into 4 characteristics: a sense of duty, a sense of justice, kindness, and a general leadership capability. The sense of duty means knowing what is expected of you or what is needed of you. This could mean military leadership or fighting skills, or politics or administrative matters. These things are not necessary for a king because sometimes one of these things are more necessary than the others. So this is one of the key features he needs to know what he has to do, what is expected of him. We see this in the show when the 14-year-old boy who does not like war and despises violence, voluntarily leads his army because he knows it is expected of him, because it is his duty. Now, next in the list is the sense of justice. This is important because any kind of lord, especially a king, would act as a judge. And it's also important because I talked earlier about balance, and without a certain sense of justice you cannot maintain this balance. We see this in the show that Arslan listens to everyone, even his enemies, to know why they did certain things, to better learn and judge them. But it also means not to judge only others, but oneself as well. This is important, to have principles and to keep with it. Arslan always questions himself if his actions are right, if it's the right thing to do. You may be surprised that kindness is a requirement for a good king, but it's what I said earlier. The king's duty essentially is to protect his kingdom. So you need to know always that there are thousands of people's lives depending on your actions, and you should adjust your actions accordingly. We see this in the show when, before every battle, Arslan is worried not about himself, not about his cause, but about the people who fight for him, and how he tries everything to minimize losses on both sides, allied and enemy. The last one is a very obvious one: general leadership capability. This means being charismatic, acting and looking like a king. Being king sometimes requires a bit of, acting, playing. Because if you have good intentions, that's not enough. You have to show that you have good intentions by throwing great feasts or tournaments to show how generous you are. It's also required to demand respect and sympathy from your followers and subjects, because if they don't have respect or sympathy for you, it will be much easier for them to turn on you. So to really drive home the point that the show is really accurate, actually, I'm going to compare two quotes. One is from the show, and one is from an actual historian, Ian Mortimer, from his book The Perfect King, The Life of Edward III, Father of the English Nation. So, first the quote from the show. The throne itself does not have a will of its own. Depending who sits upon it, it can be a seat of justice, or it can be the seat of inhuman cruelty. As long as it is a man and not a god doing the governing, he can never be perfect. But should he neglect to make efforts to reach perfection, a king will surely tumble down a slippery slope towards evil with no one around to stop him. His Highness, the Crown Prince, is always making an effort. It is merely that the fact is obvious to those around him. It is because we see him as a man to be treasured that we are all happy to serve him. Now for the quote from the book, page 10, if anyone wants to check. So why is this book called The Perfect King? Surely, if there is such doubt about his achievements, and if we cannot judge past leaders by our own standards, perfection is an inappropriate term for anyone, especially a king. All kings have failings, and Edward III had as many as most men. But I am inspired by the idea that a monarch's vision of kingship is an important factor, perhaps the most important factor, in understanding his life and reign. Kingship is a creative act. To be a good king requires vision, in the same way as to be a good architect or a good military commander requires vision. Obviously, vision alone is not enough. A medieval king was required to realize his ambitions under pressure, mindful that thousands of lives, including his own, depended upon his decisions. But we may observe that the least secure medieval kings were those whose concept of kingship did not match their subjects' expectations. The perfect king is not what Edward III was. It is what he tried to be. If all statesmen are less than perfect, then the best we can hope for is that they have some vision, some principles, and some idealism at the outset of their careers at least. So here I want to draw my conclusion to answer the question I asked at the beginning. Why did people choose to serve kings? And I think this is something very hard just to express with words. It's almost, you could say, magical. It really comes down, as both quotes describe, to hope, really. To say, this man, this person, I believe this person can do something greater than I can. And I think this person can make a change. It's this effort to perfection that both quotes described, that made people follow kings into battle, that made them subjugate themselves to them. And this is made clear in this show. One dialogue is, I have a feeling about him. I think Prince Arslan may do something incredible. Maybe His Highness can. When you're with him, it's so easy to believe it. And it's something around him that nobody other than Arslan has. Not his intelligent advisor, not his fearsome knight, not everyone around him. That makes his enemies say, I think perhaps you would make a kind and just king. And I think this show perfectly describes the sensation that humans had and some still have towards kings and monarchy. That this show is the key to understand it if you didn't already. And yes, this is for me why historical fiction is sometimes important, to help us understand something, to make us feel something, because not everything can be simply described with words. I really hope you liked this video, that there was something in this video that interested you, that made you think. Maybe you just found a new show to watch, or yes. And I have 2 more recommendations if you like this topic, or you just don't like fiction and are more non-fiction guy. I've got 2 books to recommend to you. One is the one I read from earlier, The Perfect King, The Life of Edward III, Father of the English Nation, by Ian Mortimer, and A Great and Terrible King, Edward I and the Forging of Britain, by Mark Morris. I think these both biographies describe very well what it was like to be a king, what he actually did, more than it's my ideology rant a bit. And yes, I hope you liked it. If you like it, please like it down there, and leave a comment if you have suggestions for future videos or want to comment. And if you want to see more videos like this, just subscribe. I plan to put out one every week if this goes well. And yes, and see you next time.